here we go. All right, so tomorrow we have our Chapter 5 test. The test is going to have 18 questions. All 18 questions are going to be multiple choice. All right, now, of these 18 questions, 12 of them are non-calculator. The other 6 will be calculator questions. Now, just like our same, all right, so we're going to work as far as the calculator, non-calculator part works out. I'm going to give you both parts. You're going to start the calculator part first. When you figure out that you've done as much as you can do on it or you're finished with it, you're going to put your calculator and that paper on the floor, and then you'll pick up the non-calculator part. And then if you want to go back to the calculator part, you can. But once you finish that non-calculator part, you have to finish it, okay? Because technically, you could do that whole non-calculator part with your calculator and probably be done in 5 minutes because you could just put in all the numbers, okay? However, you're going to be expected to do all of those questions without your calculator. Each question is worth the same amount. So I'm going to give you the Scantron with all 18 questions on it, and you're just going to fill it in. So it's not like before where the calculator part was worth more, or it depended on how you did. So it's all equally weighted. Each question is the same number of points. Okay, so 18 questions, all multiple choice. Now, in the calculator part, this is where it'll include questions that basically have, you're not going to get something simple like from 5-1 where I give you something like 97 degrees, 16 minutes, and I ask you to convert that. The way that you'll see the stuff from 5-1 is I'll say find sine of that angle, and you'll have to convert it within the question. And that was on the review, and I will cover that as I'm going through the different parts. So technically, really nothing individually from 5-1. It's all application from 5-1. This is where you might get something like this, where it's going to say find the value of this, or it might say find theta when sine equals 0.5. And then you would have to give me all the values of theta. Okay, there's going to be a restriction on the angles I'm looking for. I'm only going to be looking, whenever I'm asking you to find theta, from 0 to 360. And it'll have brackets, meaning that it can include 0 and it can include 360. So my advice to you is when you're asked to find theta and you see any negative angle answers, throw those choices out. Or if you see an angle measure that's greater than 360, no, I'm only looking for answers that are between 0 and 360. So that's a little hint for the multiple choice part. Now granted, it does have answer choice none or none of the above, so but at least you could eliminate some choices. The other type of question that'll be in the calculator part is going to come from 5-4. You will have to solve a right triangle. So you'll have to find missing angles and missing sides. When you were looking at the review, it was from the textbook problems that I suggested, and they were the last two, numbers 39 and 40. If you found that you needed more practice than just 2, go back to section 5-4 and pull some more practice problems from there. So that's basically your 6 calculator questions.
So there's no multiple choice questions on 5-4?
No, it is. So all of the calculator questions are also multiple choice. Oh. So even the 5-4 solving the right triangle, it'll have all the missing pieces, but listed as a multiple choice answer.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm thinking of it if it's like writing.
Sorry. Oh, okay, so no free response questions, it's all multiple choice. Okay, now as far as the non-calculator part, this is what I recommend you do maybe on your scratch paper. And the first time you encounter a question that you're going to need maybe the special right triangle or the quadrant points to get a quadrant angle, write it down nice and neatly, and then don't have to do it again. Use that same one over and over again. And this is what I mean by that. So for example, let's say we're going to first talk about the quadrant angles. So what I mean by those are the angles that are associated with each one of the axes. So an angle of either 0 degrees, 360 degrees, 90, 180, or 270. Now, remember, we also have negative angles, so we could go the other way, and we could say negative 90, negative 180, negative 270, and also negative 360. So what we're going to do is whenever they're asking us to find, say, the sine of 180, I'm using the order pairs. I'm not drawing a triangle for these angles that I just put on the end of my x and y axis. So for example, the order pairs we're going to use are these first ones. So here it's going to be 1, 0, 0, 1, negative 1, 0, and then here 0, negative 1. So if I wanted to find the sine of 180 degrees, what I would do is draw in the 180 degree angle, and I can see that this would be my ordered pair that I'm using. Remember, when you have an ordered pair, the first number in the ordered pair is your x, the second number is y. Then also remember, for all of these ordered pairs, your r value for all four is going to be 1. So when you're doing these, we're going to memorize that sine of theta. Remember, it's y should you sin, so it's y over r. The reciprocal for sine is going to be r over y. Then cosine will be x over r. And its reciprocal, which is secant, will be r over x. And then the last one is tangent. And its reciprocal, which is cotangent. So once you memorize the x and the y and the r and which one, where they go, then we would use these order pairs. So if I wanted to find sine of 180, I know sine is going to use y over r, and the 180 order pair I'm using is the negative 1, 0. So I would put 0 over 1, simplify that to 0. When we're doing any of the simplification and the 0 is in the numerator, remember that will simplify to 0. If I were to have gotten 1 over 0, this simplifies to undefined. So remember, this is a multiple choice test. So remember, when there's a 0 in the denominator of a fraction, it's undefined. Okay? Everybody good so far? All right. Let's say I wanted to find cosine of 270. So then here I would draw my 270 degree angle and see I'm using this order pair. So the 0, negative 1. Cosine uses x over r. So again, same answer. I should have picked a different one. And it's 0. It's not always 0. It's not always undefined. But you would just solve it. So another thing that is not on the study guide, but we did cover it in the notes and in the homework, were types of questions that are going to use these same quadrant angles. If I give you a question that says 3, let me do it in a different color here, 3 secant of 180 minus 5 times tangent 360. Recall that what you need to do is figure out what secant of 180 is first and tangent of 360, and then go back and plug those in. So again, I'm going to use this, and again, if you write it down one time, you can always refer back to it. So I know 180 is over here and 360 is over here. So the only two order pairs that I'm going to be working with are these two. So for secant, we know that's reciprocal to cosine, so that's going to be r over x. So for secant of 180, I'm going to be doing 1 over negative 1, and this simplifies to negative 1. So then I'm going to put that in there. So 3 times negative 1 minus 5 times, and now I need to do tangent of 360. So tangent of 360 is going to be y over x. And again, I'm using this ordered pair. So y over x is 0 over 1, which is 0. So then I put a 0 here. So 3 times negative 1 is negative 3. Negative 5 times 0 is 5. My answer here is negative 3. So these type of questions came from lesson 5.2. And in the homework, they were numbers 22 through 27. So understand how to do something like this. Okay, so you do not need to memorize the Pythagorean identities, the quotient identities, any of that. You do need to know that sine and cosecant are reciprocals, cosine and secant are reciprocals, and tangent and cotangent are reciprocals. But you don't need to memorize any of the identities. We already had that on the quiz. So you will not have to simplify anything using identities. So what you do need to know from 5.2, actually 5.3 are the triangles. So from 5.2 you need to know how to do these quadrant angles. Let's go ahead now and look at the special right triangles, because we're going to use those to solve, like, say, sine of 210, where we would get a reference angle. So again, what you do is I recommend that you maybe write this down the first time you encounter a question that you're going to need it for, and then keep it somewhere nice and neat on your scratch so you don't have to keep doing it over and over again. So the first special right triangle is the 45-45. So if you recall, the two legs are both 1, and then the hypotenuse is the square root of 2. So when we would use this is when we're trying to determine the reference angle. Now, recall that we have our little acronym here. All students take calculus. And if you recall, in quadrant 1, all 6 are positive. In quadrant 2, only sine and its reciprocal are the positive ones. And down in quadrant 3, tangent and cotangent are the positive ones. And here cosine and secant are the positive functions. Now, in order to find all of the angle measures in each quadrant, once I figure out my reference angle, and as soon as it's a 45-45, we know the reference angle in quadrant 1 is 45 degrees. To figure out the angle measure in quadrant 2, I'm going to take 180 and I'm going to subtract the reference angle, and that will give me 135. Then in quadrant 3, to get that angle measure, you're going to add 45 to 180 and we get 225. So once you do this once and write it somewhere neatly, then you don't have to keep going back and adding and subtracting from 180, and then for the last quadrant, subtract it from 360, and this will be 315. Once you write this down, then you've got it and you can reference it for other questions. The other right triangle is the 30, 60, 90. So let's go ahead and fill in that. And you need to memorize that the side that's opposite the 30 is the 1. The side opposite the 60 is the root 3. And then the hypotenuse, or the side across from the 90, is 2. So this time I actually have two potential reference angles. I have both 30 and 60. So I'm going to set it up and fill in the 4 angles for these. So I'll do 180 minus 30, and this gives me 150. 180 plus 30, and I get 210. 360 minus 30, and I get 330. So those would be the 4 angles for the 30-degree reference angle. Now for the 60, again, 180 minus 60 is 120. 180 plus 60 is 240. And 360 minus 60 is 300. Again, you're still doing your all students take calculus, so that way when you get your problem, you're going to know which two to eliminate, depending on the sign. All right, so for example, we need to figure out how we can get that reference angle of either a 30, a 60, or a 45. So, for example, number 1 on the study guide had asked you to find the sine of negative 510. So what we would do here is, I like to draw the angle. Now, some people just figure out, they subtract it from 360 or subtract it from 180. However you're going to come up with the reference angle, I don't care. Okay, I'm not going to ask you to draw any angles, but if you want to draw them so you have a visual, that's what I always do. So the answers I posted, that's how I came up with my answers. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to draw my negative 510 degree angle. So what I'm doing is I'm going to go around a full circle. Now, notice so far I've only got a 360 degree circle or angle. So now I'm going to subtract because I need to figure out how much more I need to go. And I actually need to go another 150 degrees. So if I subtract 90, that would be up to here. And now it tells me I need to go 60 more. So then if I go another 60 degrees, draw my terminal side here, then I know the fastest way back for me to the x-axis to create my triangle, what's left here is 30. I know you can't really see that. Let me make it bigger. So my reference angle for this is 30 degrees. So this is where drawing that triangle will come in. We could put it here, 30, 60, 90. So again, opposite 30 is 1. Over here, opposite 60 is root 3. And this is 2. Now, as far as the signs go, you can go about this 2 ways. You can either memorize the all students take calculus, and you can realize that my angle ended up in quadrant 3, and the only thing that's positive in quadrant 3 are going to be tangent and cotangent. So my answer that I get to this problem is going to be negative because I'm doing sine. Now, if you'd rather add the signs to the triangle, you can. So again, in quadrant 3, I know that the signs on my order pair are negative, negative. So I could put a negative 1 here and a negative root 3 here. So for sine, this is where I'm going to use my SOHCAHTOA. So for sine of negative 510, I'm doing opposite over hypotenuse. So the side opposite is going to be negative 1, and my hypotenuse is 2. If you just want to work with it as the 1, 2, root 3, and then put it in as 1/2, and just know that sine in the third quadrant is negative, you can just put the negative sign there. So either way, I would confirm with that all students take calculus. That will help you double check your answer. So again, my angle ended up, the terminal side was in quadrant 3, and I know in quadrant 3, the only answers that would be positive would be tangent and cotangent. And because I was doing a sine problem, I know my answer needed to be negative. So this was the questions like 12 through 15. So for example, if I wanted to find cotangent, let me do number 13. So 13 in the study guide said to find cotangent theta negative root 3 over 3. Now, whenever you're asked to find theta, we're looking for an angle measure. So here, I'm always looking for 2, okay, whenever it's like the root 3 or the root 2. Now, if it's one of the quadrant angles, it may only be 1, depending on the answer that's there. So as soon as I see I've got a square root of 3, I know the triangle that I need to look at is the 30, 60, 90. So this is where it'll come into play that if you've memorized the triangle, the 1, 2, root 3, and then 30, 150, 210, 330, 60, 120, 240, 300. That's going to save time. So you don't have to keep redoing this every time. So what I need to do is figure out which one of these two on the bottom I'm using. I need to figure out, is my reference angle the 30 or is it the 60? So what do you think it is, Vincent?
30.
The 30? So let's try it. So let's label my sides in my special right triangle here based off of 30. This is opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse. So let's do cotangent of 30, which is going to be reciprocal. So it's instead of TOA, it's going to be adjacent over opposite. So here I'm going to put adjacent is root 3, opposite is 1. So it's not going to be that. So let's try cotangent of 60. So let's go back now and change the labels. So now based off of the 60, this is opposite, this is adjacent. So if I do adjacent over opposite, I got to rationalize it. And now it looks like what they wanted me to find. Again, the negative sign just tells me which quadrant. So I'm looking for cotangent to be negative. So what I'll do here is get rid of the quadrants where it's positive. So all students take calculus. So where tangent and cotangent are positive, get rid of those. And I didn't want that, so same thing here. Sorry, I'm doing 60. I should have done the other triangle. All students take calculus, get rid of the positives. So my answer to this question is going to be 120 and 300. You just have to decide which one of those is your reference angle, and then from there, get rid of the wrong sign. In 5.2, we did the quadrant angles. 5.3a was this, where you were either asked to find theta or they gave you an angle measure which was one of those reference angles. Okay, so it was a large angle, but then you had to bring it down to either a 30, 60, or a 45 reference angle. And then from there, figure it out. So as soon as I realized that once I did cotangent of 30 and I saw that, okay, that was wrong because this simplifies to just square root 3, and I was trying to make it look like this. Then I decided, let me try doing cotangent of 60. Once I did that, I got what I was starting out with.
Oh, it has to be negative.
Right.
Okay.
So then that's how I eliminated the quadrants where all of them are positive and where tangent was positive. Does that make sense? So now, again, these are more calculator questions. So for example, number 22, and I really stressed this when I taught it, so I'm going to stress it again when we have a negative angle. So like number 22 has the sign, negative 25 degrees, 13 minutes. This is strictly calculator. However, you can do it two ways. You can either use that apps button where you hit second apps and actually key it in just like this, and you will get your answer. Or if you don't want to use the apps button, the way that you're going to do this is you're going to hit the sign button, then you're going to hit negative 25 plus, then a parentheses. This is the tricky part. You need to also make these minutes negative when you divide that by 60. Don't forget to close the parentheses. So I've got the first set of parentheses here that I got to close, and then this one. Once you hit enter, you're going to get approximately negative 0.426. Again, it's a multiple choice test, so some of them may round the answers to the tenths, some to the hundreds. Just look for the answer that's rounded or truncated appropriately. Okay, so be very careful with negative angles. If you're not going to use that apps button, make sure you make the minutes also negative. Good? Now, recall when you're doing the calculator part of the test, the only buttons on your calculator are sine, cosine, and tangent. So if I want cosecant or secant or cotangent, then that's when I'm going to have to divide it by 1. Okay, so for example, if I said to do the cotangent of negative 175 degrees in 32 minutes, then what I need to do, because it's the reciprocal of tangent, I'm going to do 1 divided by, and then tangent, and then it'll open up a parentheses, negative 175 plus, make the 32 negative again, divide that by 60, close that parentheses, close that one, and the beginning one. If you do not close the parentheses appropriately, you will get the wrong answer. And I guarantee you, if there is a question like this with a negative angle, I guarantee you there's probably an answer choice that has it calculated as making that 32 positive. And then you're going to get the wrong answer.
So this is for finding the theta or finding...
This is just finding the value of this angle, the cotangent of this angle. Now, when we want to find theta, the divide by 1 is after we hit the trig button. So don't ask me tomorrow, do I do 1 divided by first or do I hit the button first? So make sure you got this straight. So when they're giving you the angle, we're doing 1 divided by. But if I'm asking you to find theta, so for example, if I said find cotangent, let me do cotangent again, of theta, and it equals 1.235. Okay, again, there is no cotangent button, so what I'm going to do is, whenever we look for theta, we hit the second button, so it opens up tangent, negative 1, and then now is when I do the 1 divided by 1.235. Close the parentheses. And then this is going to approximately give me 38.9 or something, so I'm going to round it to the nearest degree, 39. Now, again, when we're looking for theta, we're looking for 2 answers. So again, let's do our little coordinate plane here. 39 is in quadrant 1. Again, to get the angle measure for quadrant 2, you would do 180 minus that reference angle you just got, 180 plus the reference angle, and over here is 360 minus that reference angle. Now, granted, this is a calculator question. I really don't need to do all 3 calculations. I just need to figure out, with my all students take calculus, which ones I need to do. So it's cotangent, it's positive, so I'm going to pick this one and this one to do. So the first one's already done for me. So now all I have to do is 180 plus 39. That's my reference angle. And I get 219. So this one, I was looking for theta. So I hit tangent negative 1 first. And then here, I'm looking to find the value of that angle of cotangent. The test looks like the review, okay? So go back, in addition to not only doing the ones that were typed, go back and do the ones from the chapter review that were suggested to do up at the top. In addition to that one question that I showed you from 5.2, also understand how to do that. Okay, so if you need more special right triangle questions, go back to 5.4's homework. Because in the review, the special right triangles was lesson 5.4, and in the review, they're numbers 39 and 40. But if you need more than just 2 examples, go back to the 5.4 homework. Do some of those, or even the notes. So the 5.4 questions, if you want a picture, so if you're looking at 5.4, it could be any of the questions that are 9 through 12. from 5-4, or 17 through 22. Those will all be good examples that you can do. So let me go ahead and do one of the even ones since you did the odds for homework. Let me do number 10. So number 10, and this is in lesson 5-4. I'm going to give you A is equal to 31 degrees and 40 minutes. And they actually gave you a picture, but I think on the test you're not given a picture. They're going to tell you that angle C is the right angle. So 31, 40, and then this side is 35.9. So little a is across from capital A, little c across from capital C, and little b here. So what I need to find here is little b, little c, and angle B. So I'm going to find the measure of angle B. So I'm going to be doing, I know that angles A and B together are complements. So I'm going to make it 90 degrees and 0 minutes, and then 31 and 40. Remember, when we borrow 1 degree, it's 60 minutes. So then now I can subtract, and I get 58 degrees in 20 minutes. Now to find little b. Now remember, when you do these, solving these right triangles, always try to use your given. You could use the 58 that you just calculated, but what if you made a mistake? So my suggestion to you is go back and use this angle and this side. So I'm going to label my sides based off of the given angle A. So across from A, this is opposite. This is hypotenuse. And this is adjacent. So in order to find C, I'm going to be doing opposite and hypotenuse, which is going to be sine. So sine of 31 degrees, 40 minutes is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. And then I'll solve this. So again, remember, when the variable's in the bottom, we're going to be dividing to solve. So appropriate method would be to cancel this. So then I get C times sine 31 degrees, 40 minutes equals 35.9. Divide both sides by sine 31 degrees, 40 minutes. And once I do that, C is approximately equal to, I'm going to round to the tenths, 68.4. Now to find little b, I'm going to be doing adjacent and opposite. So I'm going to be doing tangent. So tangent, 31 degrees, 40 minutes is equal to opposite over adjacent. And then I'll solve this one. So again, multiply both sides by b. And then again, we're dividing to solve. So tangent 31 degrees, 40 minutes. Divide. Tangent 31 degrees, 40 minutes. Once I divide, b is approximately equal to 5.2 kilometers. Now, you could go back and do Pythagorean theorem, double check, and make sure that a squared plus b squared equals c squared. What you could do here is, if you could do open parentheses, 35.9, close parentheses, divided by parentheses, tangent, and then it's going to open up. I would do 31 plus another parentheses, 40 divided by 60, close that parenthesis, close that parenthesis, close that parenthesis. And you should get 58.2. If you forget to close a parentheses, you will get the wrong answer. So it's going to be critical. Now, if you'd rather convert this ahead of time and then do it, you can. But as long as you close the parentheses, it shouldn't be an issue. Okay, also, for example, if I give you something like, this is in the review. This is from the textbook. This is number 9. So it's going to tell you, find the values of the 6 trig functions for an angle in standard position. I know when we did the quiz, remember how I said find all 6? It's going to tell you one specific one to find. So you're not going to have to do one question where you have to find all 6. So, for example, I'm going to give you an ordered pair. So like on number 9, they're giving us the ordered pair 3, -4. Now, when you're doing the review, it's going to say find all 6. But instead, I'm going to say find sine of, find that. So again, remember this is x, this is y. Recall that r can be found by doing x squared plus y squared and square rooting it. Remember that sine of whatever the angle is y over r. So we're going to do 3 squared plus -4 squared, 9 plus 16, 25, and it's 5. So we would do -4 over 5. So given an ordered pair, you may have to calculate r. Or they might not even give you it as an ordered pair. They might say sine of theta equals -4/5. Find cosine theta. And then from there, you would calculate your x and then plug it in. Either way. So just realize that what goes into these, like for example, sine is y over r, cosine would be x over r. So if this was your given and you knew this was y and r, you're going to plug it into x squared plus y squared equals r squared in order to get your x. So be able to do something like this, and it's in the review. So no Pythagorean identities. It was on the quiz. It is not on the test. So you don't need to memorize those. Any questions?